Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the care and propagation of the homalomena selby. Generally, I would consider this a fairly easy to care for plant, but it's definitely come with its struggles for me over the last year or so. Don't feel bad if you've struggled with it because this is my second go around. I killed two smaller plants about a year and a half ago, so they died really quick, so don't feel bad. I'm also going to take this out of the pot as I'm suspecting it's probably going to be a little bit root bound. It's been a little bit more thirstier than normal, so I want to check out the roots. Plus, I'm also going to try my hand at propagation. I've never propagated this before, so I'm going to see how that works out, so let's get into it. Normally, I start off any plant care video with the light requirements, as typically that's the most important thing for any houseplant, is getting the right type of light. But for this one, I'm going to start off with watering. This is probably the most important thing, or one of the most difficult things to understand about these homalomenas, or specifically this selby, is watering. This plant does not like to dry out, and I typically pay a little bit more attention to this one. I will not let the soil get any more than 50% dry, and I often pick up the pot to feel the weight of it. Right now it's pretty light. If you're unsure, you can obviously use a moisture meter, and if you don't have a moisture meter, I like to use a bamboo skewer. I'll just stick it in the soil like that, push it all the way down to the bottom. I'll leave it in there for a couple seconds, and when you pull it out, there should be some soil, some wet soil, if it is wet, sticking to the bamboo skewer, and even some moisture on it. It is absolutely bone dry right now, so I definitely let this get a little bit too dry. But honestly, I watered this probably maybe 3-4 days ago, so that's why I'm suspecting it might be a little bit pot bound or root bound, just because I'm having to water it quite frequently. One characteristic about this plant will kind of freak you out when you see it is when it's underwatered, or when it needs water, the leaves will be completely flopped over. They will be hanging over the edge of the pot, and you think it's an absolute goner. It's very similar to how a peace lily would respond to needing water or being underwatered. As soon as you give it water, it'll perk back up. And kind of the crazy thing about this is you will check on it in the morning, it'll look fine. Maybe like a few hours later, all the leaves will just be flopped over the edge, and you go into full-on panic mode. You give it some water and it perks back up like a few hours later. I have a few little browning tips here starting, and I'm thinking this is related to that root bound issue. So yeah, keep up on the watering, check the soil, don't let it dry out, and you shouldn't have an issue. Otherwise, like, the leaves themselves should be more upright. You can see the lower ones here are starting to get a little bit droopy. That's a classic sign of this needing to be watered. So typically they have more of an upright structure like that, but when they start to droop a little bit, check the soil, check the pot, and give it some water. When I water this plant, I will absolutely soak the soil. So I'm just using filtered tap water. I will fill this container up and let it drain out the bottom. I'm gonna give it some more. I want this to be absolutely soaked. You can see how fast it's draining. That's exactly what you want in a soil consistency. You can see it's coming out the bottom now. I've probably used most of this watering can. I'm just gonna flush that through, and just making sure that it is thoroughly watered. Now for the light requirements with this plant. I do have it downstairs here in my little plant workshop area. It's just on a table right behind me. All of my plants downstairs here are receiving 100% light from grow lights. There's no natural light down here. I do have it about 2 feet from a grow light, and I like to use a light meter to help me determine roughly how much light my plant is receiving. I like to use the foot candle setting. Low light is classified as 50 to 250 foot candles. Medium lights anywhere from like 250 to 500. 500 to 1,000 is generally considered high light, and anything above 1,000 foot candles is classified as direct sun or extremely high light. This one is receiving kind of that higher end low light, and that's what I would put it in if it was in natural sunlight as well. So something pulled back maybe a couple feet from a bright window, or I think it would do really good if it was on the floor close to a bright window, but no direct sunlight, as you'll probably scorch the leaves. I have mine, like I said, on my little plant table here. It's fairly close to a humidifier. I just have a smaller one down here, and it is now at around 50%. This is typically what I like to keep it at, in between kind of that 50-55% humidity for my basement plants. and it is at 21 degrees Celsius down here. Obviously, these plants come from very warm, humid, tropical locations, so it's definitely going to appreciate higher humidity. I'm now going to take this plant out of the pot, and I'll talk about the soil and all that kind of stuff when I repot it. I just want to check out the roots here first. I'm just using my little butter knife to loosen up the soil. If I can keep it intact, like the soil and root ball, then that is ideal. Just going to squeeze the side here. Feeling a little bit of crunchiness, and I'm just going to slide this out of the pot. Beautiful roots on this. I'm just going to show you. It's becoming a little bit pot bound. You can see it's starting to encircle the bottom, and it's a fairly thick like root ball mass. I can feel the roots. It's very spongy. It's solid roots right to the bottom, but they look super healthy. Definitely it needs to be repotted into something a little bit larger, so I'm going to have to upsize this pot a little bit. Now I'm going to talk about propagation. I haven't been able to find any propagation videos on this plant, but I have been doing some reading, and I know these plants can be propagated by two ways, by stem cutting and plant division. I'm not going to be doing the stem cutting portion just because I don't feel comfortable with that, and I don't want my plant to look completely bare. Plus I'll have to propagate it in water or soil, and that can take some time. But I am going to try the plant division. You can see it looks like there is a number of stems coming from the main stem, so I'm assuming it sends out kind of like a little rhizome side shoot. I don't really know, but I'm going to take as much soil off as I can from around the base of the stem just to see how it grows. So I'm going to start picking away just at this side right here, just to see what we're dealing with. Now the reason why I'm doing the plant division as well, this portion of the stem should have its own root system, so there really shouldn't be any propagation other than just placing it back in a container of soil. I cleared out as much as I could just so you can see. I can't see where it's actually attached to the stem or what, but I can definitely see some roots down there. I did hear a little bit of a crack when I pulled on this little side shoot, so now I'm just trying to wiggle it out, seeing if I can get this piece with this intact root system. I shouldn't have to cut it. Oh yeah, it's coming. Now I can see clearly where it attached to the plant. Just gotta loosen this up a little bit, just so these roots can come out. And that is it. This is the propagation by division. It was actually pretty easy. It's got a few little tangles at the bottom here. Got a nice root system on it, so that makes me happy. I have no concerns about this being success or failure. I know it's going to be okay. Okay, there you go. So that is how you propagate a homalomena. Here is my propagated cutting. It just has a small little area where it attached to the main portion of the plant. You can see it right there. Just at the stem, or the base of the stem, is where it provided the offshoot, so very cool. Now I gotta find a pot for this guy, and I'm going to pot up this one as well. I'm gonna try out this self-watering pot. I had to do a little off-camera testing just to make sure I set it up properly, but it comes with obviously your plastic pot, and it comes with this little tray that sits at the bottom, and then it has this tube, which I did have to take the little cap off. It's got a styrofoam ball in the bottom, and I just slip that through. This little sliding thing comes out, and then I put the cap back on. I'm assuming you want this at the bottom of the container so they can measure the water levels. And as I fill up water in the bottom of the pot, it should tell me on the gauge here how much water is actually in the bottom. You can see it popping up like that. You can see it a little bit better this way, but when the soil's in these little holes that go down into the water, that should be how the soil wicks up the water. And obviously here's your little gauge that tells you the water level. So I think it's a pretty cool little gadget, and I've never used these before, so this is probably one plant that would benefit from a self-watering pot. we'll test it and try it out. I'm going to use a very similar soil mixture that it came in from the plant nursery. So I'm just going to use ProMix's Premium Tropical Plant Mix. And then I added some extra perlite in there, so I'm just going to mix it in as a nice airy mixture. That's maybe a little bit too much perlite, but that should be okay. There is a little bit of orchid bark in here from my aeroid mix, so I'm just going to mix that in as well. But I'm just going to have primarily the tropical plant mix and perlite, so that should actually be okay. I'm going to add a little bit of soil at the bottom, fill those little holes, then I'll place the plant on top here. I'm just going to loosen it up just a bit more. That way those roots can search out down. Yeah, that's better. I'm just going to put that around the little meter. That way the plant has some soil lower in the pot that it can search down into the new soil. I wish it was just maybe like an inch deeper. And that would have been okay. So now I'm just going to fill the soil in around the sides. I'm making an absolute mess over here. I don't have any water sitting in the bottom of the pot yet, just because I did water this plant. So the soil is quite saturated right now, and I don't want it to get any root rot. I'm just going to let this dry out a little bit, and then I will add some water in, probably in like a week or so. I'm really excited to use this self-watering pot. They've been sitting downstairs here. I ordered them off Amazon in 2021, and I just haven't had the right plant to place it in. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plant transitions to the self-watering pot. Now for the other cutting, I'm just going to use the pot that the original plant was in. Just going to add some soil in the bottom of this guy. Place the cutting in. I'm trying to find the homalomena camouflage. I haven't seen it in any stores around here. That's another one that I'm wanting to acquire. Also the homalomena, was it the emerald gem? I think it's just the green, just solid green variety. That's another cool one. So I'm definitely looking to expand my homalomena collection. These are gorgeous plants. I love them for not only the beautiful pattern, but the leaves, they're just very leathery. They're very, I don't know, plasticky type feel. It's a pretty cool plant. Okay, just gonna pack this down. I might give this one some water as well. This soil is pretty dry, so it's not gonna take long for the entire plant to throw a fit and want some water. So I'm going to soak this one, and yeah, we'll see how it does. Hopefully it survives this repotting, but that is pretty much it. I won't be adding any fertilizer or nutrients for a few months, because with most commercial potting soils or mixes, they do add fertilizer. ProMix Premium Tropical feeds up to 3 months. So probably in 3 or 4 months, if it is actively growing, then I will use my go-to Dynagrow Foliage Pro. This is a liquid fertilizer. I just mix it up in water, and I'll probably water maybe once a month when it's actively growing. I think that went pretty well for my first time propagating this plant. Obviously, I'll provide some updates down the road with how it's doing. Otherwise, I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. If you want to watch another houseplant video, click this one right here. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.